Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast. I'm your host, Dave West, CEO here at Scrum.org. Today's podcast is focused on product ownership and the role of the product owner, a topic that's very close to my heart, something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, talking about, and confusing everybody with at Scrum.org. So I'm very lucky that we're not going to be confused today because we have three people join me today, and that is Fredrik Wendt, professional Scrum trainer based in Sweden, which is even colder, I think, than Boston at the moment. Hello, welcome to the podcast, Fredrik.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess it's a little bit chillier, but still, you can see spring starting to come around in the bushes and trees and stuff. So it's getting there eventually, at least.
Well, that's awesome. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And then Kuijten, professional Scrum trainer based in the Netherlands, in Holland. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
Thank you, Dave. And I guess the weather is somewhere between Boston and Sweden over here. So.
Which is the story of Holland's life, right?
It is.
Awesome. Thank you. And then finally, left the best to last, Sabrina Love, a real product owner. Not that Fredrik and Paul haven't been in their time, but they spend more time helping others do product ownership now. But Sabrina Love is our product owner responsible for Scrum.org's instructor-led training. So if you don't like a training course, that is Sabrina's fault, just for the record. If you want to know. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Welcome to the podcast, Sabrina. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we got a really tricky question to start this with because, I'm asked this all the time. What is a product owner? How would you describe it to a layperson? Somebody that's not necessarily in the agile world community. Fredrik, this is something that you often talk about. Can you share your thoughts?
Absolutely. So the product owner essentially it's a kind of a job description, typically handled by one person, and their job is very simple. All you need to do is maximize the value that your product is generating. That's it.
Wow.
So it's that simple on paper, and that's the thing, right? What do we mean when you talk about value? There could be value to a user or a customer, and there could be value to your company. So figuring out what value you're going for is kind of the central point for a product owner when they try to maximize the value. And of course, the second thing is making it even harder. Products, they don't just fall down from trees or appear out of thin air. Products are made by people. So your second job is to enable people to create these awesome products that create value together. So that in a nutshell, I think, is it. Set the vision, set the direction, and then create a space for people to just be awesome, create that value. Does it make sense?
No, it makes total sense. But there is a question that I see a lot in the forums that I frequent around product ownership, and that is, what is the difference between this product owner accountability role, job title that you just described, and product manager? Paul, that's something that you talk about because obviously you work a lot with product managers.
Yeah. So all the organizations I've been in have somewhat different view on what a product manager and a product owner is. That makes it really, really interesting, and it's confusing for a lot of these people. But if you look at the product owner, of course, that term stems from Scrum. And what Scrum basically says is that is an accountability that is taken up by a person that is best suitable to take up that accountability. Some organizations, they make official job descriptions, they make functions out of it, job titles. but that's not what Scrum describes. So product manager usually is more of a job title / job description. There's no like a definite description of what the product manager is, and that makes it difficult because the job product manager is played in so many different ways in so many different companies. So basically, if you talk about what the difference is, sometimes there is no difference. Yeah? So, and then the product manager is the one best equipped to take on that accountability of product owner. But sometimes there is a difference. And what the company considers a product manager does something completely different from what you would expect of a product owner in Scrum to do. Yeah, so that's what makes it difficult. So sometimes it's the same, yeah, because the product manager in a company does all the things that the product owner, according to Scrum, would ideally be doing. But sometimes it's different. And then, of course, there's some patterns that companies use that work. There's some patterns that companies use that don't work as well. And they're often related to, we really like for the person that owns the product to be close to the customers and the users. So if you have product managers and other people being product owners, then that can become a bit of an issue at times. So yeah, that's. Sorry, yeah.
So let's see if I've got this in a nutshell. And so ultimately, the product owner accountability, just focus on that word for a minute, as we think about it, is, as Fredrik said, is basically a person that is responsible for ensuring that the most value possible is being delivered. Now, value is obviously very subjective and objective. It's very complicated, but ultimately they are that. Now, when we say delivered, that means ensuring that they work with stakeholders to ensure they know what value really means, because ultimately, that we don't define it. It's the people that consume, use, and pay for the thing that define value, and then work with the team or teams to deliver that, right? And the job title could be anything. It could be product manager, and in some organizations it is. It could be program manager. It could be business analyst. It could be anything that makes sense as long as they are accountable for delivering that value. Fredrik.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worth mentioning something called product ownership. Because in all of those scenarios that you outlined, you still have, regardless of what you call your roles or your people, how you divide it up, your organization essentially delivers products and services. We bundle those up and call it just products. But so your products and services, that if you don't produce that, if you don't create something that's valuable to anyone, eventually you'll go bust. Your company won't exist. So how you get to producing those products and delivering them and maintaining them, etc., that is what we call product ownership. And that is always present, regardless of how you call your roles, etc. And that is, of course, if you're good at product ownership, you are excelling at creating great value for your customers, users, and shareholders, etc.
And that's ultimately how you measure the success of product ownership, is that value metric, that value that's being delivered, long and short and long term, I guess, to the stakeholders, to the users, to the team, in terms of delivering real value to the organization. So, all right. So product, I think we've got a handle on. Now, many organizations, though, they're sort of in this in-between hybrid-y world between products and something called projects. So is there a difference? Where do projects fit in? Project versus product? Sabrina, before Scrum.org, obviously you worked in one of those very traditional organizations, and you've had some experience of this. So talk a little bit about that distinction between project and product.
Sure. So I have projects that I work on as part of product ownership, but it's product ownership takes a very different lens. I think there's more focus on how the user is getting value or benefiting from a product. A project has at least in my experience, has a very definitive, you can tell when there's a start and when there's an end. And there's typically, there's a lot of tasks involved. It may start out with some value that you've identified. But in general, product ownership is long-lived. It's not, at least I haven't experienced that there's an end to it. And I think it's maybe one of the challenges of product ownership is, being able to say no and delegating, et cetera. But product ownership versus projects. I mean, I do projects now. It's not my whole life, right? I'm still focused on the value for the customer of the product. We might have projects within doing something specific for that product. In my past life, I did work at a multinational bank. It's in the back office, so it's not customer facing. A lot of our projects were very task oriented, very much like we need our reports to say this. They need to all be green. It was more focused on making our manager look good as opposed to actually providing any value to anybody. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Dave, but that's a little bit of how I've experienced it.
I think it's really interesting as I hear you talk, like it's the other way around. You're owning the product and doing projects underneath. Whereas a lot of organizations do it the other way around. They're doing projects and they have these product owners on these teams that are owning the product underneath the project.
Yeah,
and that's a really interesting.
It's a very
difference,
different,
I think.
it completely changes how you approach your work and how you approach who you're talking to every day, and what's most important, how you remind people about what's important to what you're doing every single day. It's very, very different.
I think that the word you used was really nice, lens. I mean, at the end of the day, as much as we may paint some mystery and magic around what we do, but it's about doing stuff. It's about doing work, that stuff. It's about, working on things that are the most value. Oh, hang on a minute. It's not just about the work. It's about the value. It's about the outcomes. It's about the context. It's about the customer, the stakeholders, ultimately the P&L, as it were, the balance of the things that you're doing. And the lens that you look at this work in, this product lens, ultimately shifts how you think about that work. And hopefully you look at the most, the easiest, you do the easiest thing that gives you the most value. And that's the kind of approach or lens that changes everything. Paul, you were looking like you wanted to say something there.
Yeah, I think that's the key. The context and the way of thinking is different. And of course, there's a lot of capabilities that need to support that you need to have. So yeah, you might be doing projects in the context of owning a product, but you still need to keep in mind that these probably don't need to take too long before you go to market, because you want to validate those assumptions. So there's capabilities that you need in owning a product that may not necessarily be if you own a project or if you run a project.
And I think that is the crux of the matter. The reason why product ownership, I think, is becoming so relevant today. I was at a consumer packaged goods organization and talking to them about product ownership. And the reason why they're so interested in it now is exactly what you said, Paul. It's this, they appreciate that the world is very different. Obviously, digital is the enabler to that difference, or one of the primary enablers. And they're driving a different conversation on what value means. And it's changing the frequency of the release, the relationship with their customers, the relationship with their supply chain. And it means that historically, the very long decision cycles of projects have to be replaced with something, and they're looking to product ownership for that, which is really, really interesting. Yeah. So I do want to focus a little bit on, the challenges, because yes, as Sabrina said, when does it end? In a very yes, it's an interesting point of view. But there are lots of challenges now. Fredrik, Paul, you work with organizations doing this. So maybe, Fredrik, you want to talk a little bit about the challenges for product ownership that you see in most organizations today.
Right. So I think the challenges are not new per se. They've already existed. The main product question is, are we doing the right thing? Are we providing the right it? 2 decades ago, we were trying to figure out how to do it right, how to get the right quality. But that was in a day and age where we didn't have the abundance and the quick time to market that we see these days. So yeah, sure, we need right quality, but most importantly, we need to build the right thing, the thing that is actually being appreciated by users. And doing so requires a lot of faster feedback and acting on that feedback and getting that feedback and then decision-making loop to speed up. That is a challenge in most organizations. Most organizations, they were not brought up in that in this age where you have a mechanism in your company to make quick decision making. So that is a real struggle. Another one, of course, is defining value, long-term value, balancing total cost of ownership instead of just looking at a project short-term an output.
So hang on. So you've two big challenges. This organizations ultimately are built around efficiency, around scarcity, and around the industrial mindset, right? Is I think what I heard there, which means that delivering stuff is actually the exception, not the norm, because the impact of that stuff is, one, the expense is the delivery, the risk is the delivery. Whereas what you're saying is that's not the case. Delivering's not a risk. It's easier to do now, but also the fact ultimately, to mitigate that risk, you just deliver smaller packets of value and then learn from it. And organizations aren't built like that. Would that be one of the big issues?
Absolutely. And it becomes a challenge of discovering what the right thing is, which is why product discovery is at the lips of most people these days, because it's about how do we discover what the right it is? How do we know that we talk to the right customer, to the right market? Is this where we want to go? Does it align with our products? So a lot of these discoveries and that needs to happen as you explore and learn about your market, right?
And obviously looking at the most economic way of doing that, considering the situation that you're in.
There is an economic feasibility, there's strategic feasibility and technological. So there's a lot of stuff that you need to learn, and you have typically in the digital landscape the ability to learn quickly if you set up your organization that way. And that is the biggest challenge, getting your organization to be set up that way, learning those new skills.
Yeah. And I think being able to set up your organization that way, a lot of people just don't have the information yet how to do it. So if you look at the field and how fast it evolves, a lot of people that are running these organizations just don't have the knowledge yet to know how to do it, because it has a lot of consequences. It has consequences on your organizational structure. It has consequences on your architecture, the way you structure your solutions. It has consequences on how you deal with your people. And there's a million moving parts, and it's not spread yet. The knowledge hasn't been spread yet that far on how to be successful with it. And then what you see in these organizations, it's solutions all the way down. Because I think, I at least I have a problem. I always know exactly what's going to be necessary. and there's way too many people with that same problem still. And to really take a step back and try to see if it works is really, really hard.
Yeah, moving to that empirical mindset where you assume that I don't know, but I have an idea. How can we quickly learn about that? That is a big challenge. And when we get the whole organization to work with that kind of outset. We're like, we don't know,
Oh,
but we have some ideas. Let's allow some people the time and
oh.
space to figure it out.
So I have to lean into this a little bit. Sabrina, you've had personal experience of working with our trainer community around releasing and trying to learn from them. It's hard, isn't it?
Yes. And I did have to at one point learn that for myself, I think from experience, that it's not about gaining 100% consensus, but it is about bringing people along for the ride. The community are the people who deliver the courses. So they really need at least some amount of buy-in for it to work, for the changes to be adopted, for those changes to ultimately reach our customers. So it's very hard to gain, and particularly I want to make note of particularly we have a community that's about 360 who are global, which is amazing. It's really awesome to get that amount of diverse perspectives into the courseware, and how their customers are facing their challenges in their particular markets all over the world. That is amazing, and also a challenge because alignment is possible. 100% consensus, less so, but we are after alignment and bringing people along for the journey. So it's challenging, but it's also really fun.
Difficult, but rewarding. So the other thing is about expectation management. One of the big challenges that I've seen is when you release something and people are like, whoa, and we're like, hang on, we were just testing it on this one product. And they're like, no, everything's changed.
People are
Yeah.
inherently not change creatures. I think it's there's a lot of storytelling and a lot of why, and a lot of, at the end of the day, people have to want to change. You can't force change on them. So that is, how do you help somebody change in the direction that you're going, is probably my number one challenge as a product owner.
Yeah, and I think it highlights the importance of narrative, the importance of continuous communication, and which are skills that I definitely, as a product manager, becoming a product owner, I didn't learn. I delivered stuff, put it in a shrink wrap product, and put it on a pallet. Actually, back in those days, we used to create CDs and put them on pallets and send them out. I know, Sabrina, it's an
I had a
age.
CD player.
Yes, but the point is that now we have to create this continuous narrative, this continuous conversation with our stakeholders, with our customers, with our organization, and obviously with our teams. Really, really interesting. Yeah, value and feedback. It's just incredible. So I guess we try to keep these. God, we could talk about this for hours, couldn't we, everybody? This is
Absolutely.
such an interesting
Mhm.
topic, but we don't have hours, and certainly
Sure.
our listeners don't. They have real work to do, delivering value to their customers often. So I guess that what I'd like to finish with is a question around the increased importance of product ownership, and what does it mean to be a PO? We're seeing that. I'm seeing that. Our website's seeing that. We see traffic to our website. We see, people that say I'm interested in product ownership. We see that kind of data coming in. So we see this increased importance or increased interest in product ownership, and I guess that everybody's asking, what does it mean to be a PO? What is the future around product ownership? Sabrina, you're a real one. What do you think? Where do you think you're going to go on this journey?
Oh, I don't know. But I can't wait to find out. I think you've heard Fredrik say it a couple times about the right it. I think it doesn't matter if we can build it right if it isn't the right it, and that's something I think that's from Alberto Savoia, if I remember. And that's kind of the crux of it. I think it's we got really good at delivering stuff, and now let's get better at delivering things that matter to people. And people are complex creatures. Their needs and wants and challenges change every single day. I think, technology and software is still eating the world. Technology becomes more prevalent in our lives every single day than it ever has before. And I think that'll continue to happen. So the nature of those things, of people and technology, and the way that the world is evolving, is complex. So part of complexity is not knowing, I guess, and accepting that you can't know up front, like in a project where you can define something, you know, there's a start and there's an end, and you kind of know where you're heading and what it means to be done. In this complex world, sometimes it's a journey of figuring out what the right thing is, what is the right it. Yeah, it's so in my journey specifically, I don't know yet. I think, yeah, but I have amazing people here on the podcast with me today. I have these amazing people to help me figure it out too, and that's part of, I think, what another major difference of like my past life and my current life is. It's much more human, if that makes sense. There's many more connections, and many, like, it's an environment, I think, that supports being human as opposed to filling in spreadsheets and making it all green.
I mean, you were talking a lot about it and really about innovation, really. Mm-hmm. And I think one element of innovation that we often forget that is actually increasingly important is that human element. And I think that that's something we're learning more and more about as we explore delivering faster, understanding value quicker, trying to experiment and understand the impacts of experimentation. I think that is definitely the future. Paul, what do you think? What does it mean? Where are we going?
Well,
what's up?
Well, when you talk about innovation, it's really what it triggers to me is I always see these companies thinking of innovation as a department or something like that. And I think we really need to start realizing that it's something that you do on a daily basis in every Scrum team there is, basically. So the lines between what is innovation and what is just regular, I don't know, production work or something like that, there is not really production work anymore. Everything is innovation to some extent, to a lesser or greater extent, and how to integrate that into your product creation process and your value creation process, that's going to be the big challenge, I think.
It's a learn something new every day kind of mindset, I think. Is that what you're?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
also,
for sure.
But it's also
and more intentionally.
I think that's the point. I think it's ownership and intentionality, if those two words can be used together. I think that is something, and I love the fact that you talked about product ownership, because it's not just the responsibility of one carbon-based life form, one human being, one person. It is the responsibility of everybody that's working in a Scrum team, that's working in an organization, to deliver value and to be passionate about that, and to really take advantage of these new amazing, I think Fredrik used the word abundant opportunities that we have today. It isn't about being told what to do. It's about being told, how can I help? And giving and being, being pointed at that problem, being pointed at that customer, being pointed at that opportunity, and then getting stuff done, I guess. Fredrik, let's get the Swede to finish us off. What do you think? What does it all mean? What does it mean to be a PO? What, in this increasingly important area of responsibility?
We started out simple by talking about maximizing value. That's great on paper, but for most companies that means innovation and trying new things out. I knew, Spotify, they tried this running app. They were wildly successful, but they killed it anyway. And figuring out what that right thing is, and having the leadership that allows, not just one person to think about innovation in your company, but everyone, and setting that space up and that type of leadership to create a shared ownership of your products. I think that is one of the biggest challenges we have, and we have some great ideas on how to achieve that new leadership as well.
We certainly do, and more to come. Thank you. Thank you, Fredrik. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Sabrina, for spending the time away from actually doing it for a second to talk about it, which I really, really do appreciate. And thanks for listening, listeners. Today we heard about product ownership, about the increasingly important set of capabilities and skills that organizations are adopting to deliver more value to the world, to deliver more value to their teams, to deliver more value to their stakeholders, and how product ownership is evolving from really this set of capabilities purely in the Scrum team to manage the backlog and deliver the right tasks, to something that's a lot more holistic and a lot more interesting, perhaps. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for listening to today's Scrum.org community podcast. I was your host, Dave West. I was here with Sabrina, Paul, and Fredrik talking about product ownership today. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, share it with your friends, send lovely fan emails into Scrum.org, and of course, come back and listen to more. We are lucky enough, I am lucky enough, fortunate enough in this world of abundance to have a variety of guests on this podcast talking about everything in the area of professional Scrum, product thinking, and of course, Agile. Thanks for listening, and Scrum on.